Never give up. Real stories. Real lessons. Real inspiration. Subscribe to Storytime English channel, where every story helps you become stronger, wiser, and unstoppable. Chapter 1: The Boy Who Refused to Be Invisible. In the narrow, uneven streets of Hangzhou, a young boy named Ma Yun, known to the world later as Jack Ma, was born in 1964 to a poor family. His parents were traditional musicians, performing pingtan, a local storytelling art form. They earned little money, and in the China of the 1970s, poverty wasn't just common, it was normal. Jack was small, thin, and often bullied. At school, he wasn't the smartest, nor the strongest. In fact, he failed his math tests so many times that even his teachers began to lose patience. Other children called him stupid, and even his teachers once said, "You're not good enough to go far." But Jack had something that exams could not measure: curiosity. He was endlessly curious about the world beyond Hangzhou, about the people who lived differently, spoke differently, and thought differently. When he was 12 years old, he discovered his first teacher, a radio. He listened to English broadcasts late at night, trying to imitate the sounds. He didn't have money to buy books, so he borrowed them. Sometimes, he copied pages by hand. But what changed his life forever was one decision. Every morning, for nearly 9 years, Jack woke up before sunrise and rode his bicycle 40 minutes to a nearby hotel. There, he would offer to guide foreign tourists around Hangzhou for free, just to practice English. He met hundreds of travelers from around the world. They didn't pay him money, but they gave him something far more valuable: perspective. One of them, a young tourist from Australia, was so impressed by Jack's honesty and enthusiasm that they became lifelong friends. That friend later invited Jack to visit Australia, a journey that opened his eyes to a whole new world. In Australia, Jack saw something that changed him forever. He saw freedom. He saw people speaking their minds, choosing their jobs, and living differently from the strict structure of China's system at that time. It was the first time he realized that life could be bigger than the one he was born into. When he returned to China, he was no longer the same boy. He was determined to become someone who could connect China to the outside world, someone who could help people communicate and trade. But at that time, in the 1980s, nobody in China even understood what business or entrepreneurship meant. Jack's path was not clear. He applied to college. He failed. He applied again. He failed again. For most people, that would have been the end of the story. But Jack refused to accept defeat as final. He said later, "I failed many times. I was rejected many times. But I never thought I was a failure. I only thought I hadn't succeeded yet." Finally, after 3 years and 2 failed attempts, Jack Ma was accepted into Hangzhou Teachers Institute, now Hangzhou Normal University. He majored in English. It was during those years that he developed not just language skills, but also the courage to dream bigger. While other students were preparing to become teachers, Jack was already imagining how China could connect to the world through technology, even though he had never seen a computer in his life. In his graduation speech, he said something that made his classmates laugh. "Someday, China will trade with the world through a screen." They thought he was joking. He wasn't. Jack became an English teacher after graduating. His salary? $12 a month. But his students loved him because he was different. He told them stories, challenged their ideas, and encouraged them to think creatively, something almost no one did in China at that time. At night, he wrote in his notebook dreams that sounded impossible. Start my own company. Use technology to connect people. Never give up. He didn't have money. He didn't have power. But he had belief. And belief, for Jack Ma, would become the single most valuable currency in his life. He once told his students, "If you don't give up, you still have a chance. Giving up is the greatest failure." That sentence, spoken in a small classroom in Hangzhou, would become the foundation of his entire philosophy and the spark that ignited Alibaba, the empire that would change the future of e-commerce. Jack Ma's journey was just beginning. He was still invisible to the world, still just a teacher with a bicycle and a dream. But in the quiet corners of his mind, something unstoppable was growing. A vision for the future, a world connected not by borders, but by ideas. Chapter 2, 30 Rejections and One Promise. When Jack Ma graduated from Hangzhou Teachers Institute in 1988, he was 24 years old and full of restless energy. He wanted to prove that he was more than just an ordinary English teacher from an ordinary city. His mind was wide open, and his dreams were too large for the small classroom walls that surrounded him. He believed that English would open doors, that communication could change lives. But the world around him didn't see that way. In the late 1980s, China's economy was just beginning to change, but the concept of private business, global trade, or even the internet was still far from reality. Jobs were scarce, and competition was fierce. Jack's first challenge was simple: to find a job. And yet, that simple task would soon turn into one of the most painful experiences of his young life. He applied everywhere. Dozens of offices, hotels, factories, and companies. Every morning, he polished his shoes, wore his best shirt, and carried a folder of applications. He walked miles across Hangzhou's hot streets, waiting in long lines with hundreds of others. Each time, he hoped this one would be different. Each time, the answer was the same. "We're sorry, Mr. Ma. You're not qualified." Sometimes, they didn't even bother to say sorry. Out of the 30 companies he applied to, every single one turned him down. 30. Jack once recalled with a small laugh. "I even tried to get a job at KFC. There were 24 people who applied. 23 were accepted. I was the only one rejected." He also tried to become a police officer, but they told him bluntly that he didn't have the right height or physique. "You're not good enough," they said again, words that had followed him since childhood. But instead of breaking him, those words hardened him. Every no became a challenge. Every rejection became another brick in the wall of his determination. He had one thing that nobody could reject: his will. During those difficult months, he began teaching English part-time at a local university. His pay was almost nothing, about $12 a month, but he loved it. His students didn't just learn language, they learned attitude. He told them stories of failure, of courage, and of what it meant to keep moving when life pushed you down. The world will never hand success to you, he told them. You must fight for it, with patience and kindness together. Even though he was earning less than the cost of a meal in a hotel, Jack walked to class with a smile. Because somewhere deep inside, he knew this was not the end of his story, it was only a chapter. He often returned home to his small, dimly lit apartment late at night. On his desk lay a single notebook, filled with dreams. He wrote in English, not because he had to, but because it reminded him that the world was bigger than his failures. In one entry, he wrote, "I am not afraid of rejection. I am afraid of giving up." He promised himself that night that no matter how many times he failed, he would never stop believing that one day, his chance would come. That promise became the compass that guided him through every storm that followed. One day, while helping a group of tourists as a translator, he met a foreign businessman from Seattle. The man asked Jack to help him translate a letter. Jack's English was strong, but his curiosity was stronger. He asked about the man's country, his business, and the strange new thing he mentioned, the internet. At that time, Jack had never touched a computer. He didn't even know what email was. But the word stuck in his mind. Internet, he repeated softly to himself that night. A net that connects people. He didn't yet realize it, but the seed of Alibaba had just been planted. Still, in 1990, those were only dreams. For now, Jack's life continued as a humble English teacher. He often stood before his class, wearing the same worn-out jacket, speaking to rows of students who didn't know that their teacher would one day become one of the most influential men in the world. He spoke passionately, his voice rising with conviction. "Don't worry about money," he told them. "If you don't have money, be rich in ideas. Ideas are free. Courage is free." The more he taught, the more his own belief in himself deepened. Each student he inspired became another reason to keep going. Outside, people still laughed at him. They said he was too strange, too talkative, too unrealistic. But Jack Ma had learned something that most people never understand. Failure is not the opposite of success, it is the path to it. He would later say in an interview, "If you want to succeed, learn from the mistakes of others. Don't complain. Complaining is the easiest way to fail." By the end of that year, Jack stopped searching for a traditional job. He stopped asking for someone else's approval. Instead, he began asking himself a different question. How can I create something that no one can reject? That question became his mission. It would take years before he found the answer. But when he did, the world would never forget his name. Every rejection, every no, every closed door had a purpose. They were not punishments, they were preparation. They were shaping a man who would one day stand before presidents, billionaires, and world leaders and tell them that success begins with failure. 30 rejections. One promise. And that promise, whispered quietly in a small apartment in Hangzhou, would echo across the entire world. Chapter 3: The First Glimpse of the Internet. In 1995, Jack Ma was 30 years old, an English teacher, a small-time translator, and still a man with big dreams that the world couldn't see. He had already faced rejection after rejection, but inside him, the flame of curiosity burned brighter than ever. By this time, China was just beginning to open its doors to the world. The idea of technology was still foreign. Computers were rare, expensive machines that most Chinese citizens had never even touched. For Jack, the word internet didn't yet mean anything. But that was about to change in a way that would rewrite not just his life, but the economic history of modern China. One day, Jack received an invitation from a group of friends to help with a translation project for a small company in the United States. They needed someone who could speak both English and Chinese fluently, and Jack, with his years of self-taught English, was the perfect fit. He had never been outside Asia before. The thought of flying to America, the land he'd only read about in books, filled him with equal parts excitement and fear. But Jack's philosophy had always been simple. If you never try, how will you ever know what's possible? He borrowed money from relatives and friends to cover his travel costs, promising that he would pay them back someday. With a second-hand suitcase and a notebook full of ideas, he boarded a plane to Seattle. It was 1995, the dawn of the Internet era. But Jack didn't know that yet. When he arrived in America, everything felt surreal. Skyscrapers, clean streets, smiling strangers, it was a different planet compared to the Hangzhou he'd grown up in. People moved with confidence, technology was everywhere, and the air itself seemed to hum with opportunity. One morning, his American friends invited him to try something he had never seen before. They sat him down in front of a computer, a large, boxy monitor that hummed softly. Jack looked at it with curiosity. "This," they said, "is the Internet." Jack frowned slightly. "What's that?" he asked. "It's a network that connects computers all over the world," they explained. "You can find information about anything, people, places, businesses, in seconds." Jack leaned forward. His heart started to beat faster. They opened a search engine, one of the earliest versions in existence. "Type something," his friends said. Jack thought for a moment and typed beer. Dozens of results appeared. Beer companies from the US, Germany, Japan. But there was something missing. He scrolled down. No China beer. He frowned. Why is there no information about China? His friend shrugged. Maybe nobody has put it there yet. Jack sat back in his chair, staring at the screen. For the first time in his life, he saw a digital world, a place without borders, governments, or limitations. And in that moment, something inside him shifted. He realized that the Internet was more than just technology. It was a bridge, one that could connect China to the rest of the world. That single discovery was like lightning striking his mind. He didn't understand how to build a website, or how computers really worked, but he didn't need to. He understood something much bigger, the potential. That night, Jack couldn't sleep. His thoughts raced. He thought about all the small Chinese businesses struggling to reach customers abroad, all the opportunities trapped behind language and distance. What if he could build a platform to connect them? What if China could trade, learn, and grow all through this invisible web. The next morning, he told his American friends, "I want to make a website for China." They laughed kindly. "You don't even know how to use email," one of them said. Jack smiled. "Exactly. That's why I must learn." Together, they helped him create a simple test website, a small page about China. When they uploaded it, Jack waited anxiously. Within a few hours, emails began to arrive. People from all over the world wanted to know more about China, its products, and how they could trade. Jack's hands trembled as he read the first few messages. It was undeniable proof, that his dream wasn't crazy after all. The internet could really connect people. He later recalled that moment vividly. "The first time I touched the internet, I thought, this is something big. This is going to change the world." And for him, it did. When he returned to China, he was a man transformed. He no longer saw himself as just an English teacher. He was now a pioneer, one of the first Chinese citizens to truly understand the power of the internet. But in 1995, China wasn't ready. Computers were rare. Internet access was limited and expensive. When Jack tried to explain his vision to friends and investors, most of them laughed. "Ma Yun, stop dreaming. This is China. Nobody here will use the internet." But Jack refused to be discouraged. He had seen the future with his own eyes, and no amount of skepticism could take that away. Back in Hangzhou, he started a small company with his wife and a few friends. They called it China Yellow Pages, a digital business directory that would help Chinese companies advertise online. He worked out of a tiny apartment, typing by candlelight, using borrowed computers. He didn't have investors or mentors, only belief. The project was difficult. Very few people even understood what he was trying to do. He had to travel to businesses personally, convincing them that putting information on the internet could help them grow. Most of them refused. Some even thought he was running a scam. The company struggled financially. Jack borrowed money, lost it, and borrowed again. But he never gave up. "I failed again," he would later say, "but this time, I failed with hope." Though China Yellow Pages never became a huge success, it gave him something far more important: experience, vision, and unshakable faith. It taught him how to lead, how to communicate, and how to dream even bigger. Because in that small, fading office, among stacks of papers and a single glowing computer screen, the idea that would become Alibaba was slowly taking shape. Jack Ma had seen the internet once, just once, but it was enough. He knew, deep inside, that it was the key to everything he had ever imagined. The key to connecting people, ideas, and dreams. And like every great discovery in history, it began with a question typed by a man who refused to stop believing. Why isn't China on the internet? Chapter 4: The Birth of Alibaba. When Jack Ma returned to Hangzhou in 1999, he was no longer just a teacher or translator. He was a man on a mission that no one else understood. He had already failed once with his first online company, China Yellow Pages. He had tasted defeat, lost money, and endured laughter from those who called him foolish. But instead of giving up, he took every failure as a lesson. If you learn from your mistakes, he would later say, then mistakes are valuable. The world around him was changing fast. America had Amazon, eBay, and Yahoo. The internet was spreading like wildfire. But in China, very few people even had email. Most Chinese businesses didn't know how to sell online, and international trade was still controlled by large corporations. Jack Ma saw a gap, and inside that gap, he saw the future. He didn't want to build another company. He wanted to build a movement. One winter evening, inside his small Hangzhou apartment, Jack gathered 18 of his closest friends and former students. They sat on the floor because there weren't enough chairs. A few of them were skeptical. They had stable jobs, families, and security. Jack, on the other hand, had nothing but a dream and an old computer that barely worked. He looked around the room and said quietly, "We are here to do something big. Something that will change China. Maybe the world." The friends exchanged glances. No one spoke for a moment. Then Jack continued, "We're going to build a platform that helps small businesses sell to the world. We'll call it Alibaba." One of them laughed. "Alibaba? Like the storybook thief?" Jack smiled. "Yes. Alibaba and the 40 Thieves." He opened the door to hidden treasure with the words "Open Sesame." "I want to open doors for small businesses, for ordinary people, for dreamers. The internet will be their key." That night, Alibaba.com was born, not with money, not with technology, but with a shared belief. In the early days, the team worked day and night in that tiny apartment. There were no fancy offices, no funding, no air conditioning. They sat shoulder to shoulder on the floor, eating instant noodles and drinking tea to stay awake. They built the first version of Alibaba's website using basic tools, slow internet, and endless determination. Every day, Jack would remind them, "Today is hard, tomorrow will be worse, but the day after tomorrow will be beautiful." The website's purpose was simple but revolutionary: to connect Chinese manufacturers directly with buyers around the world. It was a marketplace for trust, a place where small businesses could finally compete with giants. But the world wasn't ready yet. Investors in China laughed at them. "No one will buy online," they said. "You're wasting your time." Still, Jack didn't stop. He gathered his team each morning, and before work began, he made them chant together. Alibaba. One world. One dream. Those words filled the little apartment with energy. They worked 16-hour days, often sleeping on the floor. Jack told them, "We are poor, but our hearts are rich." After months of hard work, Alibaba.com went live. The design was simple, but the vision behind it was extraordinary. And slowly, very slowly, people started to notice. Emails began arriving from small factories in China that wanted to sell abroad. Buyers from the US and Europe started browsing the site, amazed that they could communicate directly with Chinese suppliers. For the first time, Chinese entrepreneurs, who had been invisible to the global market, had a voice. But success did not come easily. The company was nearly broke several times. Jack borrowed money from friends, from relatives, even from his students. His wife, Zhang Ying, sold household items to keep the business alive. One night, when the power went out in their apartment, the team sat in darkness. They couldn't work, couldn't code, couldn't email. Jack looked around and saw the tired faces of his friends. He stood up and said softly, "You can quit if you want. But if you stay with me, I promise you this, we will build something the world has never seen before." No one laughed. In 1999, Jack flew to the US to meet investors. He carried with him a simple presentation, just a few slides explaining what Alibaba could become. Most people didn't understand. But one group, Goldman Sachs, saw potential. They invested $5 million, followed by $20 million from SoftBank Japan, led by visionary investor Masayoshi Son. When Jack met Son for the first time, their meeting lasted only 5 minutes. Masayoshi Son later said, "I invested in Jack because he had fire in his eyes." With that investment, Alibaba moved from a small apartment to a real office. The team grew. The dream began to spread. But even with money, Jack refused to change his values. He told his team, "Customer first. Employees second. Shareholders third. We don't fight to be the biggest, we fight to be the most respected." That philosophy shaped Alibaba's culture forever. By 2000, Alibaba had become one of the most promising internet companies in China. Competitors began to appear powerful, well-funded rivals. But Jack wasn't afraid. He had already faced something much harder than competition, failure, and rejection. He often reminded his employees, "Remember where we came from. Remember who we are. We don't win because we're smarter. We win because we never give up." And that belief became Alibaba's DNA. Years later, when asked about those early days, Jack smiled and said, "We had no money, no technology, and no plan. But we had a dream. And dreams are what changed the world." The tiny apartment in Hangzhou, where 18 people once sat on the floor and shouted "Open Sesame," became the birthplace of one of the greatest companies in human history. Alibaba wasn't just a business, it was a revolution. A revolution born not from wealth or luck, but from faith, friendship, and the courage to believe when no one else did. Chapter 5: Fighting Giants, Surviving the Internet Crash. The year was 2000. Alibaba was barely a year old, a young company led by a man who had once been rejected 30 times. The little dream that began in a Hangzhou apartment was now gaining attention from around the world. Investors believed the internet would change everything. Startups were rising like fireworks, bright, fast, and full of promise. But fireworks always fall. When the dot-com bubble burst that year, it was like a storm that swept across the global internet industry. Companies vanished overnight. Billion-dollar startups went bankrupt in weeks. Stocks crashed. Investors disappeared. And in that chaos, Alibaba, small, fragile, and based in China, stood directly in the path of the storm. Jack Ma watched as his dream trembled. The phone stopped ringing. Emails from partners went unanswered. Suddenly, the people who once called him a visionary started calling him crazy again. Even the employees, his loyal 18 friends, were scared. They had families. They had rent to pay. Some began to wonder if they had made a mistake by believing in this man who spoke so passionately about changing the world. But Jack refused to panic. He gathered his team in the small, crowded office and stood before them. His voice was calm, but his eyes burned with conviction. "The internet bubble is not our problem," he said. "Our problem is losing faith. If we survive this storm, we will win not because we're lucky, but because we have courage." That moment marked the beginning of Alibaba's greatest battle. The collapse around them. All around Alibaba, competitors were falling one by one. Many of them were far richer, more famous, and better connected. But they had grown too fast. When the bubble burst, they crumbled. Jack watched and learned. He realized that Alibaba had to change its strategy immediately if they were to survive. "Stop chasing growth," he told his team. "Start chasing survival." They cut unnecessary expenses. They reduced marketing costs, canceled parties, and gave up office luxuries. Jack even refused to take a salary for months. He told his employees, "If there's only one bowl of rice left, you eat it first." But he never let the fire die. Every morning, he walked into the office smiling, no matter how dark things looked. He cracked jokes, played games with his team, and reminded them why they had started in the first place. "We are not building a company for today," he said. "We are building one for the next 100 years. Battling eBay." While Alibaba was struggling to stay alive, a new threat appeared: eBay. The American giant had entered China, armed with billions of dollars and powerful technology. To everyone, it seemed impossible for Alibaba to compete. Reporters began calling Alibaba the little mouse fighting an elephant. But Jack smiled and said, "Yes, we are small. But remember, even an ant can bite an elephant if it has courage." eBay was focused on money and dominance. Alibaba was focused on people and trust. Jack understood China better than anyone. He knew that Chinese users needed more than just a platform, they needed a community. And that was when he made one of the boldest decisions of his career. In 2003, while eBay was expanding aggressively, Jack launched a new platform, Taobao, an online marketplace designed specifically for Chinese consumers. He told his team, "If eBay is the ocean, we will be the river. And rivers always find a way to the sea." Taobao offered something that eBay didn't: free listings, local communication, and a warm, human touch. Instead of copying the West, Jack built something that felt Chinese, full of color, humor, and trust. It worked. Within 2 years, Taobao had completely defeated eBay in China. The American giant shut down its local operations, unable to compete with Alibaba's deep understanding of its own people. Jack didn't celebrate. He only said one sentence that would become legendary. "eBay may be a shark in the ocean, but I am a crocodile in the Yangtze River. If we fight in the ocean, we lose. But if we fight in the river, we win." The heart of survival. But victory didn't come easy. During the early years of the crash, Alibaba nearly ran out of money several times. There were days when they could not pay salaries. Nights when the office was so cold that employees worked in their coats, typing through shivering hands. Yet no one left. Why? Because Jack had built something stronger than money, faith. He often walked around the office late at night, talking to his team. "You are my heroes," he told them. "One day, people will remember what we built together. Not because of how much we earned, but because we never gave up." His leadership style was strange, part teacher, part storyteller, part philosopher. But it worked. He didn't manage people with fear or authority. He led with hope. Jack believed that if you cared for people's hearts, their hands would follow. And during that dark time, it was hope, not money, that kept Alibaba alive. Rising again. By 2004, the worst of the crash had passed. Slowly, the world began to recover, and the internet started to grow again, stronger, smarter, and more real. Alibaba not only survived, it emerged stronger than ever. The lessons learned from the hard times had forged the company's DNA, humility, resilience, and long-term vision. Jack stood before his team and said, "We were born in a storm. So no storm can ever destroy us again." The same man who had once been rejected by KFC and 30 other companies was now leading one of the most powerful internet empires in Asia. He had fought giants and won. But more importantly, he had proven to the world that faith is stronger than fear. Years later, when asked how Alibaba survived the crash, Jack simply smiled and said, "Because we believed in three things: the power of dreams, the strength of our people, and the patience to wait for sunrise." Alibaba didn't survive because it was the smartest company. It survived because it had the strongest heart. And that heart, the same one that refused to surrender when the world laughed, when investors fled, and when giants attacked, would one day lead Alibaba to stand among the most valuable companies on earth. The little apartment dream had not only survived the storm. It had learned how to dance in the rain. Chapter 6: Taobao and the Rise of a New China. By 2003, Jack Ma had already faced rejection, failure, and near collapse. The lessons of the dot-com crash had left him wiser, sharper, and more determined than ever. But survival was not enough. Jack wanted to create something greater, something that would reshape China itself. At the time, China was undergoing massive change. The economy was opening up, factories were producing goods at unprecedented speed, and the middle class was beginning to emerge. But there was one glaring problem: small businesses could not reach customers beyond their own towns. Foreign companies dominated the market, and local entrepreneurs were invisible on the global stage. Jack saw an opportunity. He called a meeting with his team and said simply, "We're going to build a platform where Chinese people can buy and sell anything online. It will be free, it will be easy, and it will belong to the people." And thus, Taobao was born, Alibaba's consumer-focused marketplace. A revolution in e-commerce. The first challenge was credibility. People didn't trust online transactions. They feared fraud and scams. Many sellers refused to join, worried that no one would buy from an unknown website. Meanwhile, Competitors, including eBay China, had more money, better technology, and global experience. Jack knew that competing directly with a giant would fail. Instead, he used his unique advantage, understanding Chinese culture and human psychology. Taobao offered free listings, something no other platform dared to do. He introduced a system for ratings and reviews, building trust between buyers and sellers. And most importantly, Jack built a community, not just a website. He encouraged sellers to communicate directly with customers, to be personable, helpful, and responsive. eBay focuses on transactions, Jack said. We focus on relationships. Within months, Taobao began to grow. Sellers who had once struggled to find customers suddenly had access to millions of buyers. Housewives, students, and small shop owners discovered that they could earn extra income by selling handmade or locally produced items. In effect, Jack Ma had done more than create a company, he had created a new economy. Battling the giants again. As Taobao grew, eBay China attempted to assert dominance. They tried to copy the model, offered incentives, and used aggressive marketing. But Jack had one critical advantage: the people. He knew that Chinese consumers valued communication, trust, and convenience. eBay's platform, while technologically superior, lacked the warmth and familiarity of Taobao. Jack emphasized a hands-on approach. He personally visited sellers, explaining how to list products, manage payments, and interact with buyers. When you care about people, Jack told his team, they will care about you in return. Within 2 years, Taobao became the largest online marketplace in China. eBay eventually retreated, conceding the Chinese market to Jack and his team. This victory was not just business, it was a symbolic triumph for Chinese innovation. It showed that a local company, born from humble beginnings, could compete with the world's most powerful corporations. Millions. Taobao's success rippled across China. It empowered entrepreneurs in cities and villages alike. A small workshop producing handmade scarves could suddenly sell to buyers in Shanghai, Beijing, or even overseas. A farmer could market his local honey to urban customers. Housewives, students, and unemployed youth found new ways to earn a living. Jack Ma realized that technology was not just about profit. It was about changing lives. He often visited small towns and spoke directly to sellers. He would tell them, "Your success is not only your own. It changes your family, your community, and someday, your country." Under Jack's leadership, Alibaba didn't just make money, it made opportunity accessible to millions of ordinary people. Innovation and vision. Taobao also introduced another innovation that would later become essential: Alipay, a secure payment platform. Many Chinese consumers had been afraid to shop online due to the risk of fraud. Alipay acted as a trusted intermediary, holding payments until buyers confirmed they had received their goods. "Trust is more important than technology," Jack often said. Without trust, no business can survive. By solving the problem of trust, Jack opened the floodgates for e-commerce in China. Alibaba grew rapidly. In 2005, Yahoo invested $1 billion in Alibaba in exchange for a 40% stake, a deal that validated Jack's vision and secured the company's financial future. The spirit of Taba. Even with rapid growth, Jack never lost sight of his values. He refused to take Alibaba public immediately. He prioritized culture, innovation, and long-term vision over short-term profits. He believed that businesses should serve society, not just shareholders. Jack's philosophy inspired his team. Customers first. Employees second. Shareholders third. This guiding principle became the secret to Alibaba's success. It attracted talent, built loyalty, and created a company that thrived even during turbulent times. Legacy of a dreamer. By the end of the first decade of the 2000s, Taobao had transformed Chinese society. It made e-commerce part of everyday life, created millions of jobs, and inspired a generation of entrepreneurs. Jack Ma had started with nothing, no money, no connections, and countless rejections. But through vision, resilience, and a deep understanding of people, he had built a company that changed a nation. He often said, "The internet is not about technology. It's about people. When you help people, the money comes automatically." In Taobao, Jack Ma found more than business success. He found a way to empower the powerless, lift ordinary people, and change the very fabric of society. Reflection. Looking back, it is astonishing that this empire began in a tiny apartment with 18 friends sitting on the floor. No money, no computers, no investors, only courage, faith, and the refusal to quit. Through Taobao, Jack Ma proved that one person with a vision can change the lives of millions. And yet, even as Alibaba thrived, Jack knew the journey was far from over. Bigger challenges, new competitors, and global ambitions awaited. But the lessons of Taobao, perseverance, trust, and courage would guide him for the rest of his life. The rise of Taobao was not just a business story. It was a story of hope, resilience, and the extraordinary power of belief. Chapter 7: The Global Stage, Alibaba Goes International. By the mid-2000s, Alibaba was no longer just a Chinese company, it had become a phenomenon. Millions of people across China were buying and selling on Taobao, and the company's platforms had empowered an entire generation of entrepreneurs. But Jack Ma was not satisfied. He had bigger dreams. He wanted Alibaba to become a global force. Jack knew that taking Alibaba international would not be easy. China was still largely unknown to the rest of the world, and foreign investors were cautious about putting money into an internet company from a country they didn't understand. "Globalization is not about copying others," Jack said. "It's about showing the world what we can do, in our own way." The journey to the United States. In 2005, Jack flew to the United States to meet with potential investors and partners. The goal was clear: raise capital, expand Alibaba's reach, and position it as a global player. But the journey was intimidating. In New York and Silicon Valley, he walked into boardrooms filled with executives who had seen it all. They wore expensive suits, carried PowerPoint slides, and asked tough questions about competition, revenue, and business models. Jack, in his simple suit and humble demeanor, felt like an underdog. But he had something money couldn't buy: vision and conviction. "I don't know much about the world," he told investors. "But I know this: the world is full of opportunities for those who are brave enough to try." Many investors were skeptical. Some laughed. Some left meetings unconvinced. But a few saw the spark in Jack's eyes, the same spark that had survived 30 rejections, the dot-com crash, and eBay's challenge in China. The Yahoo investment. One of the pivotal moments came in 2005 when Jack met Terry Semel, CEO of Yahoo, and Masayoshi Son of SoftBank. Jack pitched them Alibaba's vision, a company that could connect Chinese businesses to the world, empower small entrepreneurs, and create a new digital economy. It was not an easy sell. Yahoo had its doubts. But Jack's persistence, honesty, and charm won them over. SoftBank and Yahoo eventually invested $1 billion into Alibaba in exchange for a 40% stake. It was a massive validation, not just financially, but morally. Jack had proven that a humble man from Hangzhou could convince the world to believe in his vision. "It's not about who has the money," Jack later said. "It's about who has the courage to dream." Taking Alibaba global. With new investment and global partnerships, Alibaba began its expansion beyond China. Jack envisioned a platform where small businesses from any country could connect and trade with buyers worldwide. He wanted Alibaba to compete not just with eBay or Amazon in China, but to stand as a global marketplace of trust and opportunity. Jack traveled tirelessly. He met investors, entrepreneurs, and government officials from Europe, Asia, and the Americas. He spoke at conferences, visited factories, and explained his vision in classrooms and boardrooms alike. Everywhere he went, he repeated his mantra. Small businesses are the backbone of the world. If we empower them, we empower the future. The world began to take notice. Alibaba was no longer just a Chinese story, it was a story of innovation, resilience, and leadership that transcended borders. Challenges and skepticism. Going global was not without its challenges. Many foreign investors questioned Alibaba's business model. Can a Chinese company dominate e-commerce globally? They asked. Jack didn't fight them with anger or arrogance. He fought them with facts, stories, and proof of Alibaba's impact in China. He shared stories of small farmers selling their produce, housewives building small businesses, and young entrepreneurs realizing their dreams. Alibaba is not just a company, he said. It is a movement. And movements cannot be measured in spreadsheets alone. His sincerity and passion won hearts. Slowly, skepticism turned into respect. Slowly, Alibaba's reputation grew beyond China. Building a global culture. One of Jack's greatest achievements during this period was building a global company culture. He knew that expanding internationally wasn't just about money, it was about people, values, and trust. Jack famously said, "Employees first. Customers second. Shareholders third." This philosophy, unusual in the corporate world, created loyalty. Employees worked harder because they felt respected. Customers stayed because they were valued. And investors eventually thrived because the company succeeded sustainably. Jack also encouraged innovation. Every employee was allowed to propose ideas, challenge norms, and experiment. Even in a global expansion, Alibaba remained nimble, human, and adaptable, qualities that would help it survive challenges other giants could not. Global recognition. By 2007, Alibaba had made its mark on the world stage. Its platforms connected millions of buyers and sellers, proving that a company built from a small apartment in Hangzhou could compete globally. Jack's story became legendary. From being rejected 30 times, surviving the dot-com crash, and defeating global competitors, he was now a symbol of persistence, vision, and hope. "I have failed so many times," Jack said in an interview. "But every failure taught me one thing: never stop believing." The global stage was no longer a dream. It was reality. Alibaba had become a bridge between China and the world, connecting people, businesses, and ideas in ways that were once unimaginable. Legacy of the global vision. Jack Ma's journey to the global stage proved that courage, vision, and resilience can overcome skepticism, financial limitations, and cultural barriers. He didn't have advanced technology or global connections at the beginning. What he had was a heart that refused to give up and a mind that could imagine the impossible. Alibaba's expansion became a lesson for entrepreneurs worldwide. Dream big, even when others doubt you. Persist, even when the world says no. Empower people, and success will follow. Jack Ma once summarized it perfectly. If you want to grow, learn from others. But if you want to succeed, trust yourself. From Hangzhou to Silicon Valley, from rejection to global recognition, Jack Ma had proven one thing: one person with a vision and persistence can change the world. And even as Alibaba grew into a global empire, Jack never forgot the lessons of his early life: humility, perseverance, and the power of dreams. The world had opened its doors to Alibaba not because of money or luck, but because of the heart, courage, and unshakable belief of one man who refused to quit. Chapter 8: The IPO that shocked the world. By 2014, Alibaba had grown into one of the most powerful e-commerce companies in the world. Millions of consumers relied on its platforms daily. Small businesses flourished, jobs were created, and the world had begun to recognize that a humble company from Hangzhou could compete globally. But Jack Ma was not done. He had a new vision: to take Alibaba public and show the world that a Chinese company could achieve global financial success without compromising its values. "I want to prove," Jack said, "that a company can be both profitable and human-centered." The plan was ambitious. An IPO, initial public offering, would require Alibaba to open its books, face scrutiny from regulators and investors worldwide, and compete with the most formidable financial institutions. Many warned him it was too risky. Some even said, "Alibaba is too young, too unusual, too Chinese, you will fail." But Jack had a simple response: "I am not afraid of failure. I am afraid of not trying." Preparing for the IPO. The road to the IPO was grueling. Jack and his team spent months preparing documents, financial statements, and presentations for investors. Every number, every forecast, every legal disclosure had to be perfect. Jack was relentless. He insisted on transparency, accuracy, and clarity. But he also insisted on keeping Alibaba's culture alive. He refused to sacrifice employees' welfare or company philosophy for the sake of profits. Profit is a result, not a goal, he reminded his team. Never forget why we started. In meetings with global investors, Jack did not rely on slick presentations or fancy suits. He spoke with honesty and passion, telling the story of how Alibaba had grown from a small apartment with 18 friends to a global platform empowering millions. Investors were intrigued. They had seen IPOs before, but never one led by someone so humble, so determined, and so human. Facing skepticism. Many analysts doubted Alibaba's ability to succeed. They questioned whether Chinese consumers could sustain such rapid growth. They worried about competition from global giants like Amazon and eBay. Jack knew the skepticism was inevitable. He also knew how to turn it into strength. He reminded his team, "Doubt is fuel. Use it to prove them wrong." Alibaba's approach was simple but revolutionary. Unlike many Western tech companies that focused on short-term profit, Alibaba prioritized long-term growth, customer trust, and empowering small businesses. This philosophy, once questioned, became Alibaba's competitive advantage. It allowed the company to thrive where others stumbled. The historic IPO. On September 19, 2014, Alibaba went public on the New York Stock Exchange. The IPO raised $25 billion, the largest in history at the time. The world watched in awe. Jack Ma, standing before the press and investors, smiled quietly. He didn't boast. He didn't brag. Instead, he shared the story of the countless entrepreneurs who had trusted Alibaba, the employees who had given their hearts and nights to the company, and the millions of consumers whose lives had been touched. "This is not my success," he said. "This is the success of every small business in China who dared to dream." The IPO was more than a financial milestone. It was a symbolic triumph for a company that had started from nothing, faced rejection, survived a global crash, and grown into a world-class enterprise. Lessons in leadership. The IPO also reflected Jack Ma's unique leadership. He believed that vision, culture, and perseverance were more powerful than money or technology alone. Vision. Jack always imagined a future larger than what others could see. Perseverance. He never gave up, even when Alibaba faced near collapse during the dot-com crash. Culture. He built a company that valued people over profits, trust over speed. These principles guided Alibaba through every challenge, from local competition to global scrutiny. Empowering the next generation. The IPO allowed Jack to achieve more than financial success. It gave him the platform to empower the next generation of entrepreneurs worldwide. Jack often spoke at conferences, sharing his story. Do not give up. The world will say no many times. The internet is the great equalizer. You can create opportunity, no matter where you start. He encouraged young people to embrace failure, to take risks, and to focus on creating value for others rather than chasing wealth. Alibaba's IPO became a case study in leadership, vision, and resilience, proof that humility, courage, and determination can conquer even the largest global stage. The legacy of the IPO. The 2014 IPO was more than a financial achievement. It symbolized Persistence over rejection, 30 job rejections, countless failures, and near-death experiences in business led to this moment. Belief in people, Alibaba succeeded because it empowered employees, sellers, and consumers. Global recognition, the world finally acknowledged that China could produce world-class technology and innovation. Jack Ma had turned a small dream into a global phenomenon. Yet he remained grounded. He knew success was not permanent, and that the real challenge was to continue innovating and empowering others. Money is not the goal, Jack said after the IPO. It is a tool. The real goal is to make life better for ordinary people. Reflection. The Alibaba IPO shocked the world not only for its size but for the story behind it. It was a story of a man who refused to quit, who believed in dreams when the world doubted him, and who built an empire without losing his humanity. Jack Ma once reflected, "I started with nothing. No money, no connections, only dreams. And now, the world can see that dreams, when pursued relentlessly, can become reality." From rejection and failure to global success, Jack Ma's journey reminds us all, no obstacle is too great, no dream too big, and no person too small to make history. The IPO was not the end, it was another beginning. Alibaba had proven its strength, and Jack Ma had proven a universal truth: the world belongs to those who dare to dream and refuse to give up. Chapter 9: Challenges of Leadership, Balancing Vision and Reality. By 2015, Alibaba had become a global powerhouse. Its platforms connected millions of consumers and businesses across China and beyond. Jack Ma had achieved what few could dream of, from 30 rejections to leading one of the largest e-commerce companies in the world. Yet, as any visionary leader knows, success brings new challenges. The journey from a small apartment in Hangzhou to the global stage was far from over. Leading Alibaba was no longer about building a dream, it was about sustaining it, managing people, and balancing ambition with reality. The strain of rapid growth. Alibaba's growth was extraordinary. Revenue was skyrocketing, platforms were multiplying, and new markets beckoned. But rapid expansion came with costs. Internal tensions grew as departments competed for resources. Decision-making slowed because the company had become too large for quick, intuitive moves. Employee burnout became a real concern, as the team worked long hours to meet deadlines and innovate constantly. Jack Ma realized that the old ways of leadership, storytelling, personal mentorship, and hands-on guidance were no longer sufficient. He had to adapt without losing the culture that had made Alibaba strong. Growth is not just about numbers, Jack said. It's about people. If your people suffer, your growth will collapse. Maintaining culture. Alibaba's success was built on a unique culture: customers first, employees second, shareholders third. But as the company expanded, maintaining this culture became difficult. Some executives began prioritizing profit over people, efficiency over empathy. Jack recognized the danger immediately. He spent hours walking the floors of offices in Hangzhou, Beijing, and even international branches. He met employees at all levels, listened to complaints, and reminded managers of the company's mission. He held weekly sessions called heart-to-heart talks, where employees could speak freely. Jack would ask questions like, Are you happy here? Are you growing? Do you feel trusted? He believed that if employees thrived, customers would be served better, and profits would naturally follow. This human-centered approach helped Alibaba weather internal conflicts and retain talent during critical growth phases. Navigating global competition. By this time, Alibaba was not just competing with Chinese companies, it was facing global giants like Amazon, Google, and eBay in various markets. Expansion into overseas markets brought new challenges. Regulatory hurdles in foreign countries. Cultural differences in business practices and consumer behavior. Technological competition with more advanced infrastructure. Jack understood that brute force would not win these battles. Instead, he relied on strategy, patience, and innovation. He often reminded his team, compete with giants by understanding people, not by imitating them. This philosophy guided Alibaba's international expansion while preserving its distinctive culture and competitive edge. Dealing with criticism. Leadership also brought intense scrutiny. Every move Alibaba made was analyzed, criticized, and sometimes misunderstood. Journalists, investors, and governments questioned Jack's decisions, his strategies, and even his personal behavior. Jack handled criticism with a rare blend of humility and humor. If everyone praises you, you are doing something wrong, he would joke. If everyone criticizes you, you are probably changing the world. This mindset allowed him to make bold decisions without being paralyzed by public opinion. Innovating while scaling. Jack Ma knew that staying on top required constant innovation. Alibaba's growth had been fueled by visionary platforms like Taobao and Alipay, but resting on past successes was not an option. He encouraged teams to experiment, fail fast, and learn quickly. He created incubators for new ideas, invested in logistics, cloud computing, and mobile commerce, and fostered partnerships with startups and universities. Technology is important, Jack said, but innovation without purpose is useless. Always ask, how does this help people? This focus on purposeful innovation kept Alibaba ahead of competitors and allowed it to scale without losing its original mission. The pressure of leadership. Leading Alibaba also took a personal toll on Jack Ma. The pressure of decision-making, public scrutiny, and global expectations weighed heavily. There were moments when even he doubted himself. I sometimes ask myself, he admitted, am I making the right decisions? Am I leading my people well? But then I remember why we started to help ordinary people achieve extraordinary things. Jack's ability to stay grounded during pressure became a defining trait of his leadership. He often said that resilience, patience, and vision were more valuable than talent alone. Preparing the next generation. One of Jack's greatest concerns was succession. He knew that a company as large and impactful as Alibaba could not depend on a single leader forever. He focused on mentoring the next generation of executives, instilling in them the same values that had guided him. Empathy for employees and customers. Courage to take risks. Persistence in the face of failure. Long-term vision over short-term gain. Jack believed that the legacy of Alibaba depended on people, not just profits. If you build a company only for money, he said, it will fail. If you build it for people, it will last forever. Reflection. By 2016, Alibaba had overcome not only external competition but also the internal challenges of leadership. Jack Ma had grown from a dreamer in Hangzhou to a global leader who balanced vision with reality, ambition with empathy, and innovation with human values. The company's culture, resilience, and purpose were now stronger than ever. Jack understood that the true test of leadership was not just achieving success, but sustaining it, nurturing it, and preparing it for the future. Leadership, he once said, is not about being the smartest or the richest. It's about caring, persevering, and inspiring others to dream bigger than themselves. Through challenges, criticism, and enormous responsibility, Jack Ma proved that great leaders are defined not by how high they rise, but by how deeply they lift others along the way. Alibaba had become a global empire, but its soul remained grounded in human-centered leadership, resilience, and unshakable vision. The journey was far from over, but the lessons of this chapter would guide Alibaba and Jack Ma for the rest of their remarkable journey. Chapter 10: Legacy of a Dreamer, Jack Ma's Philosophy and Impact. Jack Ma's story began in a modest apartment in Hangzhou, a man who had been rejected 30 times, laughed at by teachers, and turned away from jobs and opportunities. Yet, through relentless perseverance, vision, and an unwavering belief in the impossible, he transformed not only his own life but the lives of millions around the world. By the time he stepped back from day-to-day leadership at Alibaba, Jack had become a symbol of resilience, innovation, and human-centered entrepreneurship. His legacy was not measured solely by wealth or accolades, but by the impact he had created and the lessons he left behind. Vision beyond borders. From the moment he first encountered the Internet in the United States, Jack understood its potential to connect people. He didn't see technology as a mere tool, he saw it as a bridge between dreams and reality. Through Alibaba, Taobao, and Alipay, Jack empowered small businesses, artisans, and ordinary citizens to reach global markets. He demonstrated that success was not the privilege of the wealthy or well-connected, but the reward of creativity, courage, and persistence. Opportunities lie in places most people overlook, Jack would say. You just have to be willing to see them. This vision extended beyond China. He inspired entrepreneurs worldwide to dream big, innovate boldly, and prioritize people over profits. Perseverance through adversity. Jack's life was defined by rejection and failure. 30 failed job applications, the collapse of China Yellow Pages, battles with eBay, and the dot-com crash could have ended his journey. Yet, he never surrendered. His philosophy was simple but powerful. If you don't give up, you still have a chance. Giving up is the only sure way to fail. Jack's story shows that adversity is not a barrier, but a training ground for resilience. Every setback, every criticism, and every obstacle strengthened his resolve and sharpened his vision. People first, always. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of Jack Ma's leadership was his unwavering commitment to people. From employees to sellers to consumers, he believed that human trust, empathy, and collaboration were the keys to lasting success. He instilled this philosophy in Alibaba's corporate culture. Customers first, their satisfaction drives the company's purpose. Employees second, their growth and happiness sustain the company. Shareholders' third profits are the result, not the goal. This focus on human-centered leadership allowed Alibaba to scale globally without losing the heart and soul that made it extraordinary. Innovation with purpose. Jack Ma's approach to innovation was not about technology alone. He sought to solve real problems, create value, and improve lives. Alipay addressed trust in online transactions. Taobao allowed small businesses to thrive. Alibaba Cloud helped companies worldwide modernize and scale. Each innovation was rooted in a simple principle: people first, impact second, profit last. Technology is meaningless if it doesn't help people, he said. By prioritizing purpose over short-term gain, Jack created an ecosystem of innovation that continues to evolve and transform industries, inspiring the next generation. One of Jack Ma's most enduring legacies is the inspiration he provides to young people. His life teaches: dream boldly even when others doubt you. Embrace failure, it is the greatest teacher. Persist relentlessly, success often comes after repeated setbacks. Serve others, impact matters more than money. Through speeches, interviews, and philanthropy, Jack has motivated millions to pursue their dreams, take risks, and prioritize meaningful work. He has shown that entrepreneurship is not just about wealth, it is about changing lives. Global influence. Jack Ma's influence extends far beyond Alibaba. He has become a global ambassador for innovation and entrepreneurship, speaking at international forums, mentoring startups, and promoting education and philanthropy. His story demonstrates that vision, courage, and humanity know no borders. He proved that a person from humble beginnings can not only achieve personal success but also reshape society, culture, and economies. Philosophy of life. At the heart of Jack Ma's legacy is a philosophy that blends humility, optimism, and courage. Failure is a lesson, not a defeat. Dreams require persistence and action. Empowering others creates lasting success. Courage and optimism are more powerful than fear. Even as he stepped back from Alibaba, Jack continued to focus on education, philanthropy, and global challenges, ensuring that his influence would extend far beyond the business world. "I don't want to be remembered for making money," he said. "I want to be remembered for helping people, inspiring dreams, and making the world better." A life that inspires. Jack Ma's life is a testament to the power of vision, resilience, and human-centered leadership. From Hangzhou to the global stage, from rejection to record-breaking IPOs, he showed the world that success is built not on wealth alone, but on courage, empathy, and persistence. His journey reminds us that dreams can be realized even against all odds. Challenges are opportunities to grow stronger. True leadership is about lifting others, not just oneself. Jack Ma's story will continue to inspire generations of dreamers, entrepreneurs, and leaders worldwide. He has proven that one person with belief, courage, and determination can change the world. And in that, his legacy is eternal, a dreamer who turned vision into reality, and reality into hope for millions.